Hi, I'm Laura, and this is the Laura Flanders Show, a TV and radio program that shines a light on the solutions of tomorrow today. We report on the people and movements driving systemic change from the worlds of politics, arts, and entrepreneurship. Welcome. Hip-hop is huge, and this year is its 50th anniversary. There is much to celebrate. BBC series, now on public television, tells the story of how hip-hop was born in the streets of the Bronx, the poorest, blackest borough in New York City, and spread to the West Coast and then the world. Hip-hop changed music, fashion, art, commerce, media, dance. It even changed politics. And who was in the White House? Today, some say hip-hop is dead, or at least lost some of its collective fighting spirit. Others look at the uprisings against police killings and the multi-billion-dollar global music market as indications of its continuing success. So let's wade into the conversation. Today, I am honored to have two guests whose entire lives have been bound up with hip-hop. Rosa Clemente is an award-winning organizer, journalist, and historian specializing in Afro-Latinx identity and Black and Latinx liberation movements. In 2008, Clemente became the first Afro-Latina to run for vice president of these United States, alongside Cynthia McKinney on the Green Party ticket. Chuck D is the leader and co-founder of the legendary group Public Enemy, and the author and executive producer of that series, Fight the Power, How Hip-Hop Changed the World. Two of his albums have been named Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. His song's the same. He's been awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Grammys, and he's about to launch a new app called Bring the Noise. After 50 years fighting the power, how is it going? And what does hip-hop have to teach? Let's have at it. Chuck, Rosa, welcome to the program. I am so glad and honored to have you with us. You start off this good series on PBS, BBC by saying, Chuck, that hip-hop has a lot of stories to tell and a lot of lessons to teach. So off the bat, give us a lesson, give us a story, take your pick.
The title says it all, Laura. Fight the Power, How Hip-Hop Changed the World. And the most important word in that narrative is world. It's been around the world for at least 40 years. What's been helped? I mean, technology has helped it, in the form of recordings. If it started as a sort of like an organic cultural art form coming out of the ashes of a place that was abandoned and left to the side and left for dead in 1973 to give it a start point. It doesn't begin our culture as a people, but it's a start point at a particular time with a new way of looking at presenting music and art and culture. And so 1973 is a date, but it goes around the world when it becomes a recorded art form for vocals and music and the perception of making one DJ sound like a band in 1979. And so how it's changed the world, okay, that's the tunnels and the roads that came out of the art form. How it got filled with the content to be able to make somebody think differently is the story of the execution and the elocution of rappers, DJs, breakdancers, graffiti artists, and activists.
Talking about activists, let's throw it to Rosa. I mean, your family has had a house in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, for years. Talk a bit about the 70s. This is almost before your time, but not quite.
I was born in the Bronx in 1972. And, I remember two specific moments in the Bronx. So landlords were setting buildings on fire to get insurance. So that's where the Bronx is burning when Howard Cosell was hosting a big game at Yankee Stadium, And what it was is I remember holding my mom's hand because she was pregnant with my sister. And then we go outside. And it's nuts. It's crazy, because it was the biggest blackout. I just remember that. But then I also remember all the times my cousins took me to jams. They took me to parties. They took me roller skating, So then when our family moved to the suburbs in Westchester County, hip hop was always the soundtrack of my life.
Talking about great soundtracks, the PBS series on the 50 years of hip hop has an excellent one of those. You can check it out on a station near you or online. Here's the trailer from Fight the Power, How Hip Hop Changed the World.
In the 1960s, the era of resistance and turbulence helped create hip-hop. Hip-hop became our voice that was for so long silenced.
When we look at a global context, people across cultures can listen and say, that's my story too.
For the music heads out there, Chuck, what was it exactly that DJ Kool Herc did at that was it a back to school jam there in the Bronx that was so different just at the level of the music itself?
Yeah, it was a back to school jam. And as Rosa was saying, that it's funny that, you know, in the 70s, you have a disco inferno by the Tramps that was ripping up and heating up the floors in clubs that, you know, Black people couldn't get in, like Studio 54. But up in the Bronx and other places, disco inferno meant another thing. It meant that disco was dead since it was appropriated, you know, by, you know, everybody else other than the core where it started from, of that on and on to the break of dawn music that Kool Herc says, well, I got 2 turntables instead of 1, so I can keep the party going. That's a tip of the hat to Caribbean culture, Jamaican culture especially. And Kool Herc was a transplant from Jamaica.
Rosa, you said, you know, that hip hop became the soundtrack to your life, and your life has been and is still a life of activism. When you think of the music, what music do you think of, and what role did it play in that activism of yours, which was about an array of things, if you want to talk about some of them?
Yeah, even when I was going to college as an undergrad at SUNY Albany, you know, hip hop was obviously, it was always there, but me being in school, I didn't think, you know, that 10 years or 15 years later, there would be something called hip hop activism, you know, because even though I had learned about hip hop, the 5th element, knowledge, culture, and politics, is where I reside. And someone like a Dream Hampton, Asha Bandeli, Joan Morgan, Bakari Kitsawana. I mean, it was an incredible moment when I graduated from college, because I have, you know, I'm meeting these people that I'm kind of reading about. So, you know, and it was also tied to, I went to college a few years after, particularly college students were rising up against apartheid, you know? And then I do remember that crystallizing moment when I watched Do the Right Thing and Public Enemy and Chuck, and like seeing that video, our politics, it just, I was like, why are we always focusing on negative stuff, right? Like, you know, and so I was young, so I would have never thought there would be hip hop activism, a hip hop political agenda, or anything in that regard.
And that's how the two of you connected. We'll get to that in just a minute. But before we do, let's talk about Fight the Power. 1989, 1990, the film of Spike Lee that brought you and Public Enemy to that incredible stage. The power, I mean, just to give people a sense, this is a moment where Americans have been sold a sort of culture of individualism. If you've got a problem, it's your own private problem. If you've got a victory, it's your own private victory. If you haven't picked yourself up by your bootstraps, it's your own private fault. You're saying power, fight the power, got people to think about power in a different kind of way. But you must have had a zillion people that said, what power?
There was a 3-year period from 74, 75, well, really 73, 74, 75, where the whole country was on skates. And the Isley Brothers countered that with Fight the Power. All this BS going down. This is the first record I ever heard a curse word in a popular radio song, especially in Black music, which always tried to be like, please play our records and begging and forgiving and all that stuff. But the Isley Brothers came out defiant. And so when Spike Lee asked for an anthem, I had no idea he was going to put thread the movie with the song 500 times. I mean, who does that, right?
But just to push a little bit about this question of power, I mean, in the 70s, coming out of the civil rights movement, you've had a lot of people talking about power. By the time you get to the 80s, power is pretty obscured for a lot of folks.
Yeah, it's scattered, it's decimated, and the whole, we call it the R&B movement, and the R&B movement, which is Reagan and Bush, that was very clear and evident as they tried to make America great again, and we were at the bottom of that totem pole. Black and brown people were just like ashes at the bottom of that totem pole, left to like, and all of a sudden, you had things that were infiltrated that later on got pointed back to government and the CIA, the infiltration of hard drugs and guns. So what with the hypocrisy and the dichotomy of, actor who's a president saying, like, this is the war on drugs. Like, what the F are you talking about? You guys had something to do with planting the seed that this fruit of poison is falling on us, and you're talking about stop it when you guys are the cause root. And we have no particular level of media clapback to make people understand how foul you are. Hence, rap music. Hence, hip hop. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder why I keep from going under. Ha, 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 ha.
We had the 80s. Here come the 90s. I think three things happened. One was we were beginning to understand police violence and containment in our communities. My generation just came out of seeing the Central Park Five incarcerated, right? Like, my dad would always bring a Diario, the Daily News, and the Post. And when Donald Trump came and put up these billboards to bring the execution back to New York State because of the Central Park Five, then we're going into the 90s and the diversity of the music, right? Like, it wasn't that every person at the beginning of hip hop was always saying, quote, what we would think political things are, so that was important too. And then we also begin to see SWAT teams being created in South Central LA. And I think that's what led to particularly people on the West Coast, like, we're going to rhyme about it, rap about it. We're going to have our parties and things like that. And lastly, just roller skating. Like, people don't understand what it meant to go to a roller skating ring as a Black and brown person. It was a safe space. People are who they are. No one was judging. You're on your skates and you out, and then you're going to the club later tonight to see one of the, the rap artists. But I think it did begin to also, after Bush and Clinton is elected, we already knew what they were about to do. But when Clinton, and they got the Juvenile Justice Act passed, then we begin to see our communities really, really locked down, being tried to contain, but at the same time, continuing to create things that were political. And one important moment is the song Self-Destruction, where you see all the rappers that you're like looking at, like, oh my God, they're politics, KRS, Chuck D, Moni Love, Queen Latifah. You see it, you're heading for self-destruction, you're heading for like that. It itself kind of started people's mindset around, wait, there's political music.
This is the Laura Flanders Show. I'm Laura. We're talking about hip-hop at 50 years old, from its origins fighting injustice and shifting power to its influence on music, art, dance, fashion, and social movements today. My guests are award-winning independent journalist and organizer Rosa Clemente, whose work is centered on Afro-Latinx identity and hip-hop feminism, and hip-hop trailblazer and Public Enemy co-founder Chuck D. He's the author and executive producer of the PBS series Fight the Power, How Hip-Hop Changed the World, and he's about to launch a new app called Bring the Noise for hip-hop fans over 35. Next, Chuck sheds light on the significance of the 1989 Stop the Violence Project and the release of Self-Destruction by the Stop the Violence movement, a group formed by KRS-One with the hope of ending violence being committed within the hip-hop community. You can watch this episode to see the trailer for Fight the Power and find our past interviews with both my guests in our archives. There's also a playlist spotlighting more of our reporting on arts and activism at lauraflanders.org if you want to dive into more. While you're there, opt in for our weekly newsletter to receive information on all our audio extras and web exclusives, including the entire conversation from today's show. You won't want to miss it. Our conversation on the program continues, but first, here's an ode to Public Enemy's Bring in the Noise, performed by Brownout from their album Fear of a Brown Planet. Talk a bit about that, self-destruction project, Chuck, and why you felt it was so urgent and what you were trying to accomplish. And I don't know, do you feel like you succeeded?
What the conversations that people are having today about school violence were happening at just crazy amounts in the Black neighborhoods in the 1980s. And it even came and floated up to the point where violence affected one of our great, leaders of hip hop, KRS-One and Boogie Down Production, with the murder of B.J. Scott LaRock. And people just thought that was inconceivable that somebody in hip hop, which was a party thing that got us out of the gangs, that brought us all together, got us away from, those things that were set to destroy us, that all of a sudden that somebody who is quote unquote a rap artist and famous for doing it is now, murdered. And now it's real life now. And with that, on top of all the things that were going on, a project was also was planned to speak against this violence that now spilt over now into culture. And that was the Stop the Violence movement. KRS-One, Nelson George, and Carly, who's executive at Jive Records, which was the record label that Boogie Down Productions has just signed to. KRS-One artists on that label, Hank Shockley and others, Daddy O from Stetsasonic, and a cachet of artists from Public Enemy to Heavy D to MC Light, spoke out against what was already happening for the past 10 years, but it got and culminated into a momentum that needed to be addressed. And why not use the widespread broadcasting ability of a record to speak against it? Because we knew that was going to permeate society more than CNN was going to give us an interview on it.
Rosa, the 1990s, the late 1990s, I think it was 98, also saw Lauryn Hill come out with Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, kind of calling out sexism and machismo and describing the, what life was like for single moms and others. You were in the thick of things at that point. And I think we have to say, when we talk about Fight the Power, that the struggle to fight male power was facing an uphill battle.
Lauryn has a record that was 25 years ago, classic, but she made a big move to saying, I'm not going to stay within this crew of the Fugees anymore. And she disappeared, because the sexism, so many things. I think, you see Lauryn Hill, like she could have gone one way, especially as it relates her actual body. She did not go that way and she refused. So for me, Lauryn Hill was, led me to then Joan Morgan, who had just come out with her book When Chicken Had
Feminist music critic.
Right. And made what I still think to this day should be the sixth element of hip hop feminism. The thing is, we were also fighting in New York State against the Rockefeller drug laws. So when we're organizing, we also have to be respectful of the artists may not know everything. We as activists don't know everything. So when I joined the Malcolm X grassroots movement, that became the space where we would work with artists. Like, we're not shaming you. Y'all ain't shaming us. How do we come together?
Just to take a step back for a second, this is so fun to hear all of you. And I'm just going to play a little role of interlocutor and point out what people are hearing. Maybe this isn't your story, folks out there, but you're hearing how to make something out of nothing, how to be heard when you don't have the media. You're hearing how to call people out without canceling them, without erasing them, how to participate in a critique that isn't based on shaming. Where do you think the power is today that needs to be fought?
The power is information, the power is connectivity, but, we're coming out any day now with the Bring the Noise app, and it's cultural media. We feel that cultural media is greater than social media because it's just a lot of everything. It's an ocean of everything, and then we're more like a lake that's figured out where you dock your boat. It deals, with the fam, filmmakers, artists, and musicians, and throughout that ability to be in that setting, there's some truth to the power of creativity. So is it a social media app that's going to be out there to reflect and then dictate and lead society? No, by no means necessary. It deals with culture and also the education about culture. Because if you lead society to lead culture, that's like government being in control of culture. And culture is the thing that brings us human beings together for our similarities and knocks the differences to the side. And it's that real verb, it's that real vibe, it's that pulse that human beings have, and it's best, transferable through culture.
It does seem there's an awful lot that we could, as a big white society, be learning from hip hop that has often been kind of buried. And perhaps even in our 50th anniversary, we could be doing more to look at what are the actual outcomes and experiments here.
The whole key is, can you keep the currency of attention from one generation to the next generation and then the two generations further? The currency is attention right about now. And what Rosa was doing in the years of 2004 to 2009, right? I'm just taking a 5-year period, is not to be forgotten. So this whole thing of burying is it's laziness, it's oxygen loss, and making light of scholarship.
Well, Rosa, you're a scholar, and I should point out that you teach and speak all over the country. Could things have been different, do you think? And do you think the critique that you and others brought to the movement is getting adequately reflected in this 50th anniversary?
No, not in this year. I mean, the continual erasure of hundreds of women, in fact, I'm not doing a lot of interviews for that reason. I can't, like everything for almost 15 years of our lives in this political active moment in hip hop was also watching our backs. What rapper who's a man going to come and say we don't belong? Or somebody wrote a critique about your album. So then you have men literally running up on you. And I remember calling Chuck one day, like, this dude is not hip hop, like he's making his clothes in sweatshops. But what I did begin to see is really the rap industrial complex, as I call it, and the money. Because one thing the pioneers all taught us is none of them would have ever thought I can make millions of dollars. And most of them still don't as the pioneers, right? Like we don't have a healthcare union. There's no pension or retirement for hip hop. But these are things that we did fight for.
I want to ask each of you to close with the question that I ask all of my guests, really, which is, what is the story you think the future will tell of now? What is the story you think the future, 20, 35 years hence will tell of this moment?
I for sure know that there would be no Black Lives Matter moment. There would be Puerto Ricans fighting for independence, all of that comes through hip hop culture. And with all that is good and that's bad as well, that's the story that needs to be told. But if women continue to be erased, if trans people continue, if LGBTQ people continue to be erased, and I'm not talking, like, I think there's an unfair amount where hip hop is critiqued solely as the place where these things happen. No, they're happening from the White House all over the world. Like, we didn't create white supremacy. And part of this conversation is also like, we'll have people tell us, you're dealing too much with identity politics. And I'm like, Trump is literally running on a white supremacist politic. And how don't people see that? And how at this moment are people not understanding what can happen again? So to me, that's what hip hop, young people will decide, but the culture will never be dead. Absolutely no.
Chuck, the story the future will tell of now, it'll probably be a song.
Future is not an accident, and the future ticks. It's not a thing where we could say 10 years later, 20 years later, 5 years later, even maybe not even 3 years later. The future is at every tick. So work on it.
Tick, tick. Chuck D, Rosa Clemente, what a pleasure to spend the time with you. It's really been a joy. I once heard culture defined as the way we do things around here, and I well remember the way that white commercial culture vilified hip-hop and rap in the 1990s. Instead of actually listening to the lyrics or considering the music and its changes, the headline writers started using the word super predator, and terrifying articles ginning up white fears were running in papers from coast to coast. The statistics on crime never bore out that racist trope. Juvenile arrests for serious crimes like homicide had been on the decline for years before 2000. And yet, while a few politicians like Hillary Clinton had to apologize for her use of the word super predator at last, the mainstream media never have. Today, the price for all that terror-baiting continues to be paid in Black life. A young 16-year-old African-American man, Ralph Yarl, currently lies in hospital, shot in the head in Kansas City by an elderly white man who, instead of seeing an asset on his doorstep, saw a threat solely because of that young man's race. Can we create a different culture? People like Chuck D and Rosa Clemente help. But white America, we need to do more, listen more carefully, pay more attention. So how about it? For more information on this week's show, check out our show notes posted every week at patreon.com/The LF Show. That list includes links to related articles and past episodes from our archives to explore. It's also where you'll find an invitation to watch the premiere of each week's episode on our Laura Flanders Show channel on YouTube and chat live in real time with me. Sundays, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. See you there. The Laura Flanders Show remains free of advertising and organically fueled by you, our listeners, and rest assured that every penny you contribute when you join our team is stretched to the max. While we may have a fraction of the resources the corporate-financed media have, your support packs a punch, resulting in this show getting out free to millions on public TV and radio, as well as a podcast. Join our fabulous Patreon partners who commit a monthly donation of whatever feels comfortable to them, or make a one-time donation at lauraflanders.org/donate and become a member of this program today. Thanks for listening. This show is produced by yours truly, Laura Flanders, along with Sabrina Artel, Nat Needham, David Newman, Rory O'Connor, Jeanette Hernandez, and Jeannie Hopper. Major funding for this program is provided by the Novo, Park, Ellen Poss Family, Hisuku Wilson Foundations, the Schumann Media Center, Rising Fund at Tides, Kim Connor and Nick Groombridge, Jane Fonda, and listeners like you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for contributing. Thanks for your ideas. Stay kind, stay curious. Until the next time, I'm Laura.